Hello, you are with 10 Minutes with the Coopers, and I am David.
And I am Wendy.
Tonight, my wife and I are here with you to talk about some important lessons that we have learned while being a couple and being parents of four. So, I'm going to start this off and talk a little bit about one major lesson I've learned when it comes to being a leader and the leader of my home is how difficult of a job it is. The responsibility of leading your family every single day is much harder than I thought it was when I was a younger person. Now that I'm getting a little older, I understand watching my daughters all move on through life, on to their own life. And you always question, what would I change if I could start over again? And have these little babies back in my arms, and what would I change? For me, I always have this saying that, I say that sometimes you can overlove your children. You can
Yes.
love them to the point that you make them weak.
Yes.
You try to, every time they fall, you try to pick them up. Every issue they have, you try to answer the call for them. Everything that comes up, you come a running to try to rescue them. For me, I think, as much as I love you girls and you little man, one of the things that I've learned is you should never overlove your children.
That's true.
You want to add anything to that about overloving the kids and how that is, you think that's played out in our relationship with our children, baby?
I guess for us, the overloving has caused us to overparent in a lot of situations, especially with our girls being young adults now. And I think that we are still finding ourselves kind of it's okay to guide and give advice when your children grow up and become young adults. But I think we find ourselves trying to fix situations for them as opposed to allowing them to go through different trials and tribulations in their lives so that they can learn those hard lessons so that they can have those moments of growth that are so important as you're growing into a full-fledged adult. Because I think there are different stages of adulthood. I don't think you just, as soon as you turn 18, oh, I'm an adult now. No, I think that becoming an adult is a process that takes growth, and it takes going through trials and different experiences to become this full-fledged woman or man. And in our case with our girls, I feel like we have tried to fix it, fix situations that honestly God probably wanted us to take a back seat on so that he could move, so that he could show them that ultimately he's the one that they need to rely on when they find themselves in predicaments that they don't necessarily know how to navigate through. And I think that that's where we have stumbled and we've fallen as parents.
I agree. You remember the first time I think it was Imani, and then we did the parent weekend, and then they started going over the whole thing about college when they used a term that we became very familiar with, FERPA.
Oh yes.
I had no idea what FERPA, even if I'm pronouncing it correctly, FERPA was all about. But when we were there, I think one of the instructors was saying, make sure your children sign the FERPA so that you can know what's going on with them. And I thought to myself, like, you kidding me? They should already know to call the parent if something comes up.
Right.
College was a rude awakening, and it was obvious that they expect your kids to be adults.
That's true.
They started saying things like, Mom, Dad, learn how to use social media. Your kids are not going to answer the phone when you call them. Don't drive all the way to college because your kids are not responding. That was when, I think that's when it started really kicking in, when we dropped Imani off at FAMU.
Right.
And then, because we were moving from Florida, so we moved out of our place. We moved her into college. And then it was time for us to leave and come to North Carolina. And it was a really hard moment for me. And I think, it was hard for her as well. And Imani, I know you're going to hear this, so you can chime in if you like. What it was like for us to drive off and leave you there. It was really difficult. It was emotional. We thought, man, finally one of our daughters, as much as we were ready for them to kind of move on, it was so real at the idea we were dropping her off and she was going to be away from us.
Right.
And I think by the time we got the kid too, hey India, we were a little bit better at dropping them off, and so again, getting back to that term for the reality was that your kids are now gonna start learning to fend for themselves, and mom and dad get over it, and that was really hard because we weren't there to make sure everything was going well. I know for me that was a very difficult moment. What do you think? How do you think you felt at the first sign of your oldest leaving the nest? What was that like for you, baby?
I mean, it's the same feelings that you had, same feelings and emotions. Just a little bit of fear, just uncertainty about her ability to be in a whole completely different state than us.
Yes.
At that time, like my husband shared, we moved the same weekend. So we moved her into her dorm room at Florida A&M University in Tallahassee, Florida, and kept going in the moving truck to Winston-Salem, North Carolina. And that was difficult for us. We weren't sure how she was going to be able to handle such a big transition. First of all, being a freshman in college, and then having her family be a couple of states away. So we weren't able to be reached, as easily as we were before when she lived in the home. So that was nerve-wracking for me as a mother. Yeah. And we just had to trust that God had her in his hands. And thankfully we, had friends that lived in Florida and were able to check in on her for us and be those allies that we needed, to make sure that she was doing okay. So.
Exactly. And then, like I said, when we had kid number 2, you, India, that was a little bit easier for us. We were able to get her situated in her own apartment, and then off the GA we went
Georgia
and left her there. As tough as it falls within that same vein of, well, we're not so easily accessible to issues if they come up. And again, each time it started getting a little easier, only because you accepted the fact that this is what's supposed to happen. Right. And then we get to kid 3,
Alana.
COVID made it a challenge for her. So having to do school online and having to
still live
at home, and she was so looking forward to getting from under the nest because my simple rule. My rule was, when you're 18 and you're out of my home, I'm not going to be coming around pulling Martin Lawrence and hiding under your dorm bed. I just wasn't going to do that. And so she doesn't have that opportunity. She has to navigate college and be here with us. And right. I know that she's so ready to leave, and we're praying for you, sweet. I know you're so ready.
And then to India, I mean, obviously she ended up moving here to the Atlanta area over the summer. So, we're still. She's loving mommy and daddy. But we love you, India.
And so like I said, we're learning now that we have Isaiah, who's in middle school. But I still feel that same tendency, that tendency to want to answer every problem and try every time something come up with the teachers. We're quick to email or call or something. And I think so. The message I think we want to leave with you guys is: do not learn how to wean yourself off of over loving your children. Because at some point you can easily overinvest and not leave anything for your relationship.
That's true.
So my parting words is try not to over love your children. If you anybody with kids understand where I'm coming from. That doesn't mean don't love them. Just don't over love them.
And leave them in God's hands. Ultimately, He's the one that's in control, and we have to trust that He has that purpose and plan set for our children, and He is going to continue to shape, guide, and mold them.
Amen. That's 10 Minutes with the Coopers. We hope you'll enjoy it. Remember, don't over love your children.
Goodbye.